Well, once again, thanks very much indeed for joining us this evening at this event. People have been asking, who are we? What is this place? This is St. Nick's Church, formerly St. Nicholas Cole Abbey, if you look us up online, but we call ourselves St. Nick's Church. It's a little bit more sort of accessible and friendly. Many of the members here are regular members of our Sunday congregation. We have lots of guests with us this evening. I think it was 2 or 3 months ago, we thought it'd be really nice just to have a relaxed summer's evening where we were all sort of outside on the terrace, and we'd invite our friends in to come and listen to a really sort of good answer to the questions on the screen. Why bother with Christianity? Well, I'm sorry, we had to ditch the first part of that, and we put on the central heating. So I hope everyone's sort of comfortable, but we will still answer the second part very clearly. That's the main event. Why bother with Christianity? And there are going to be a number of different sort of contributors to that. I'll sort of pop up at the end of our time. Will be sort of formal content, about half an hour or so. I'll pop up at the end and just to say a little bit more about some of the things that we do here, very briefly. But I hope you feel sort of relaxed. If you haven't already sort of switched off mobile phones, now would be a good time to do that. And I think probably people have found facilities. They're back in the corner over there. Please just be relaxed, munch away on whatever's in front of you. And I'm going to hand over now to Tom Barnardo, who's one of the team here. He's going to guide us through the rest of our time. Tom.
Great. Well, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us. As Chris has said, my name's Tom. I'm also on the staff team here. And it's my great pleasure this evening to be able to introduce to you our, or should we call them interview victims, something like that, for the next 20 minutes or so. 2 members of our church family, Sophie, Connor. Guys, thank you so much for being up for this. Let's start with the easy question, shall we? So, Connor, you go first. Why don't you tell us who you are, what you do, and then why don't you end by telling us what is the furthest you've ever run?
Hi, Tom. I'm Connor. I work at Expedia as a commercial insights manager, selling holidays. And the furthest I've ever run is probably about 10K.
Okay. In one go or with a break in the middle?
One go.
Well, I think that's pretty impressive. Sophie, same questions to you. Who are you? What do you do? And what is the furthest that you've ever run?
I'm Sophie. I work for Camden Council doing basically research and comms for sports and leisure. So think parks and recs, that's what I do. And the furthest I've ever run is 44 kilometres because I added 2 to the marathon.
Round of applause for
Sophie.
Thank you so much. I think that's really, really impressive.
And that's the end of tonight. No.
Just out of interest, how do you add to the length of the marathon? Isn't it a set-out course?
Well, it's a set-out course, but there's only one line that's a blue line. So whilst everyone's cheering you on, it's like everyone's elbowing each other to get into the skinniest part of it. And obviously I was pushed out, so it was savage. It really was.
It is savage. And obviously the loo breaks add a bit of, few
did.
meters on as well. Now, guys, you've agreed to be interviewed on the question, why bother with Christianity? Sophie, let's start with you, because for a long time you didn't think Christianity was worth bothering with. Why don't you sort of tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, bother is actually more of a polite word than I would give it, but I just couldn't be bothered with it growing up. I was born in Luton, so really, really diverse, multicultural place, not many Christians about, but lots of diversity. So from that, I was kind of told by my parents and my upbringing and my school and the culture that I was in that kind of every path leads to the top of the mountain. Like, as long as you're a good person and you do good things and you believe in something that's palatable and not kind of against the world, then sure, you'll make it to whatever's the good place. So, it was kind of cherry picking those ideas. But then we moved to Northern Ireland, and that's kind of where I had my formative years. So my family upbringing, I was going to say it's not normal, but I think for lots of people it probably is, which is a really sad reality. There was a lot of chaos in the family, there was a lot of violence in my upbringing, and because of that, it was kind of behind closed doors, you keep quiet, you do what's most acceptable, and you try and make the least controversy. And I took that out into the world too, where anyone I interacted with, I just wanted to be liked, I wanted to be loved. And I think we kind of all experience that in the world as well, of you can go with any trend and you can get the next kind of whatever's cool and hip of those times, and you can cling on to that and be the coolest version of yourself, and you get lots of attention for it. And Christianity was never that. It was boring. It was everything I didn't want to be. I saw it as really controlling. I hated that it was kind of, I associated with the patriarchy. I associated with like tweed and long skirts and pigtails and all the things I didn't want to be. So I went through loads of phases. I wanted to be super sporty. I wanted to be an emo. I wanted to be a goth. I wanted to be all of that.
What was the best phase of those?
Yeah, the best phase. I remember my mom walked in, and this is like peak family breakdown, also peak Menti B, where I was like 14 years old and I had a razor and I was just shaving like an undercut in my own head. And it was like, I had like aggressive red hair because it was like the Rihanna phase of life, which you probably all remember, and an undercut. And I was going into school thinking, gosh, like, you really have to commit at that point.
Is there still evidence available of this?
You will never see it. There's about 2 people in this room who've seen it, and they are sworn to their grave to never show it. But because of that, Christianity just wasn't cool. It seemed to me like, ultimately, it was just a force of control. I was really interested in sociology, and I really believed that it was just kind of, if you have a life crisis, you'll cling to religion because that's the only thing you know. And I felt sorry for Christians. I thought they didn't know the world. I thought that they weren't progressive. I thought that I was like really woke. I went to university in Edinburgh at the start, and unfortunately I had to drop out because my mental health got really, really quite poor. And then after kind of a stint in hospital, a stint working, I then ended up in Durham. And I thought I faced death, and I was like, do you know what? I know the key to life, and it's just being bold and courageous and having the strongest views in the room so I can be heard. I just wanted to be heard. And what I ended up doing is all of my essays concluded, well, if we didn't have Christianity in the UK, we'd have a lot better place. I had a podcast which basically concluded the same thing of Christianity was just a means to control people. It was a means for kind of men to get up the ladder and women get in their place, or people to be silenced or feel like they have to become this certain person that makes them good. I thought they all thought they were better than me. And at a time whenever you feel like the world's been so harsh to you, you're clinging to identity that kind of affirms that you're a good person. And I just wanted to affirm I'm a good person by rallying around everyone except Christianity. So I was speaking up for lots of religions that were kind of in the community, like Buddhism, Hare Krishnas, Judaism, whatever, Muslims, speaking to all of them, being like, yeah, I'm sure that's a good thing, but Christianity, things like that, I was like, ew, no, like, get alive type thing. So it just wasn't for me. And then I met a Christian, and it changed.
Okay, well, home into uni then. So I'm getting a picture sort of hostile to Christian things, but if you were to sort of sum up why, what was it at heart, do you think?
At the heart of it, I thought that it was trying to tell me who I should be. I thought that it was trying to control me in ways that I'd been controlled before. And what I'd seen of Christianity was always mocking it. It felt stupid to think that you're a Christian. It felt really regressive. It didn't feel new. It didn't feel like it would do anything for me. And it felt silly to even think that it could be true, let alone investigate it. So I was slightly just, really turned off by the thought of, oh, Christianity's a cool thing. It felt really possessive and controlling.
And narrow and all that sort of stuff. So what changed?
Yeah, what changed? So I'm sure lots of you, if you've gone to university, they do events week or versions of it in schools and things like that, especially in the UK. And it's basically like lots of talks thrown into the afternoon and then in the evening. And we had one Christian friend in my halls who was really great at sharing the invites, and I felt a bit bad for her because loads of people were telling her like, no, I'm not coming, like that's peak, I'm not going. So I thought, okay, I'll be a good friend and I'll come. And at the time, I was in my vegan phase of life. So I was like, I went to one on the environment, and I was sitting there being like, okay, like I believe this, I'm doing better than all of you. Like, I don't eat eggs, I didn't drink milk. Like, I was like, okay, I'm actually better than these Christians. And then the other one was really controversial, and it was about sexuality and relationships, not just about, it was about how we interact with one another. And I remember walking out being like, absolutely appalled. I was so offended. I wanted to convince them they were wrong, so I was having arguments with the Christians. I was absolutely outraged. And I wasn't going to go back, that was on the Tuesday. And then it got to the Friday, and I was like, please just come along one more time. So I was like, okay, I'll give it one more shot. And it was similar to this, where it was an interview followed by a talk in John's Gospel. And the interview was just astounding. There was this woman who spoke so clearly about her life and her experiences. And I saw so many similarities where she was saying that she just wanted there to be peace in her life. So she was accepting so many different truths and just trying to be as kind of palatable and acceptable to the people around her as possible, that she didn't actually know what she believed. And the fact that truth can't be like that, it was relative in her mind, but actually if you're talking about eternal life. You can't say that there is multiple truths. There can only be one way. And then for the first time, she spoke about knowing Jesus. And that's the first time I'd ever heard someone mention Jesus as a real person rather than an idea or kind of someone who was a bit of a magician. That's kind of what I was taught growing up. And she spoke about speaking to him and praying to him and having her kind of mind open to the fact that there could be a reality beyond the grave, things like that. And I wasn't really convinced, but then the speaker was similarly talking about his experience of knowing Jesus, but talking from John's Gospel. And there's one thing that's really stuck in my mind this whole time. There's a verse in John 14, verse 6. If you have Gospels, like, feel free to open it. But it says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." And it was like super simple of there is only one way to eternal life. There is only one truth. There can't be multiple truths. You have to accept for yourself, even if you don't believe it, that there is a truth that you have there. And life. Jesus says that he is the only one that can give eternal life. Whether you believe that or not, it's a claim that he makes. And I walked out the tent and I was sobbing. I was mortified. I was literally like, oh my gosh, my life's a lie, everything. But more, not because I kind of had my eyes, at that moment I believed. It was more because I realized that this whole time, I've been trying to chase an identity that I didn't have. I just wanted to be someone that was loved and someone that could be like adaptable to every part of society and be seen as the most kind of woke girl there was because I was progressing it. I was doing all of this. I wanted to save myself. And actually I realized I'm so weak and internally there's a battle going on that no matter how you present on the outside, you always know that there's something that's just not pointing you to a better life. There's something that internally something was wrong and I couldn't quite place it. So then lockdown happened. So I went home and I was like, yeah, maybe I'll read the Bible. So I was with like kind of a non-Christian family all at home. They were all kind of mocking me for reading the Bible, thinking it was a bit cringe, which to be fair was a little bit cringe, like, but hey. And I joined a Bible study and it was like a classic doom Zoom where like I had my camera off, I was on mute, I didn't ask any questions, but I just listened. And just listening made me so curious. I didn't just look into Christianity, I looked into loads of things. I was still hoping that kind of all paths lead up the mountain. I was really hoping that I could cherry pick. But the more I looked into it and the more history I saw that I believed, and then the more of Jesus I saw, I slowly started to realize when I was defending him to my friends and family, when I was wanting them to know this character, when I was seeing that actually he is the only hope and only truth there is, I realized, I was like, oh gosh, I've become a Christian. and it took me months to get into church, which is one of my regrets. But slowly but surely, I realized that, yeah, it's really transformative knowing Jesus. And it's not kind of that, what you see in the movies, where it was like super amazing, all in that immaculate moment and like light beamed from heaven. It was more just like a slow knowledge of who Jesus was. And talking to him and praying to him and reading the Bible. It was just super cool. And now here I am.
Oh, that's an amazing story, Saif, and it's an amazing claim, isn't it? I'm the way, the truth, the life. We're going to come back and think about that some more later on. Connie, you've got a slightly different story. So Sophie's story, a bit more sort of, not just apathy, but hostility to Christian things growing up. What was your view of Christianity at a sort of similar stage?
Yeah, so growing up, I lived with my parents in a small village in Cambridgeshire, a bit like the Hot Fuzz village, very quaint.
Lots
friendly.
of swans.
A couple of swans with a wreck. And there was a small village church there, so I went there with my mum and dad from about up to age 12 or 13 or so. And I think that early experience of church probably, and the people there, shaped what I thought of Christianity, what I thought it was like, what I thought it was about. So I, in terms of adjectives I'd use to describe Christianity growing up, like nice, friendly, maybe slightly old-fashioned, maybe kind of for like older people or really young people, maybe like nice sayings and phrases that help you make sense of life, but perhaps not super relevant whilst I'm in my 20s and 30s in London. So definitely wasn't anti-Christian things. Probably would have called myself a Christian. Looking back, quite confused. But like, I'd say kind of nice, friendly, but maybe not super relevant. Yeah, so that was my view of Christianity growing up.
Okay, so nice, friendly, but not super relevant. What changed?
What changed? Well, I think I realized that a lot of that early experience and how it shapes my view of Christianity, around like 17, 18, 19, 20, a series of experiences meant that I kind of challenged and realized a lot of those adjectives I've just used were wrong. So I met several Christians, one of whom was in the same sports team that I played in, and it was like, okay, well, he's my sort of age, he's quite fun, he's engaging, he's just quite good at life. And so I was like, okay, maybe Christianity is not just for old people or kids, etc. Met up with him, and he offered to sit down, read some of the Bible, discuss any questions with me, and realized as I did that actually, Jesus, there's lots of things, lots of adjectives you might describe him, but nice probably isn't one of them. He says some quite hard-hitting, punchy, real, true things about what we're like, what God's like, how we've treated him, how God will respond. And it's like, this is kind of, I couldn't put Jesus in the nice bucket that I'll then ignore when I actually read what he was really like. I think as well, listening to and asking lots of questions on who Jesus is and what he says on some of these big issues that I was thinking about around relationships, career, ambition, family. I realized Jesus has a lot to say on some of those big issues. Other adjectives that I had that were then dismantled. I probably thought that Christianity was maybe low priority and optional in life. So when I was 12, 13 and then onward to 18, I'd much rather play sport and have fun because I thought that was more interesting or exciting than kind of going to church and reading the Bible. But then came to see actually Jesus speaks really relevantly into a lot of these big areas of life that I was thinking through.
Yeah, so, let's press a bit deeper on that then. So in terms of the sort of relevance of what Jesus has to say, what were some of the claims that most struck you and most made you think, no, I need to think about this properly?
Yeah, I think I brought a little John's Gospel. I'll read out one claim that Jesus makes that did stand out. So John 6, verses 66 to 68, Jesus is speaking to his disciples, and he says some quite hard-hitting things to them. And then John, the writer, says, after this, many of his disciples turned back and no longer walked with him. So Jesus said to the 12, do you want to go away as well? Simon Peter answered him, Lord, to whom shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. And so the claim there, Jesus is claiming to offer eternal life. And you see in those verses, a lot of people basically don't buy it, ignore him, leave. But then this guy, one of Jesus' disciples, Simon Peter, is like, well, actually, where else would I go? Because there's something that I've heard from you that makes me think there's real value there, that only you are offering a way to experience eternal life. And John, elsewhere in this gospel, explains eternal life is being able to have a relationship with God that starts now and lasts even beyond death. So that sort of claim I recognized, a bit like Simon Peter. There's loads of voices telling us how to live life over the next 30, 40, 50 years. But Jesus is razor focused on what happens after death, on offering eternal life, making sure people can restore their relationship with God. And I was like, I'm not getting this anywhere else. This is relevant. I'd like to look into it again.
And it's an extraordinary claim, isn't it? Eternal life, because we're all going to die and we all need to be forgiven. And so for Jesus to make that claim it's really striking, isn't it? Look, guys, thanks for your honesty. I mean, we could go on talking, I guess, about your stories all night because they're both so interesting in their own way. Just as we close, I guess in this room there'll be a variety of people who are sort of potentially ambivalent about Christianity for various different reasons. So some of them might be similar to your reasons of hostility, patriarchy, exclusive, sort of nice but a bit irrelevant, and maybe ambivalent for other reasons. So if there was one thing you could say to people in that category, just as we close, what would you say?
Yeah, I think for yourself, you deserve to know what your truth is. I think you deserve to investigate it for yourself as an adult. and look into it. I think it's really easy to get distracted and think that, oh, there'll be time for me to figure out what I believe. But it's not embarrassing to look into things. It's not embarrassing to pick up a Bible. It's not embarrassing to ask a Christian. Like, it took me a while. I held my tongue because I didn't want to offend someone, or I felt too shy to go into the building. But that's what, if you really value that friendship, then ask those questions, and they will be honest answers, and that's ultimately what you want. So yeah, I would just say be bold with it. You're not going to offend anyone. You're not going to embarrass anyone, and most of all, it's not embarrassing. So that's what I'd say.
Not embarrassing. Ask your questions. Connor, same question to you.
Yeah, I think I'd tell myself to maybe have another look. I realise so many people in London kind of don't ignore Jesus. But don't be afraid. I tell myself, don't be afraid to not follow the crowd. Have a look, because it may just be that he's offering something that no one else is.
Like eternal life, as you brought to our attention. So it's an amazing thing. Look, guys, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. Should we give these guys a round of applause just as they grab a seat? Thank you so much. And both Sophie and Connor, I'm told, are going to be sticking around afterwards. So if you do want to sort of press them a bit further on anything they said, then do, by all means, go and grab them. Though, as Connor told us, he has such an exciting job. There might be quite a long queue wanting to know where to get the best holiday deal with Expedia. So you'll have to be orderly. But look, as we end this evening, I just thought we'd look together at that verse that Sophie mentioned earlier on. So it's a verse down in John's Gospel, which you can find, I think, scattered on your tables. And if you don't know, this is just a biography of Jesus written by John. John was one of Jesus' closest friends, and he wrote it within a few years of Jesus' death. And the verse is on page 43. So if you would just turn there. Why bother, we're asking, with Christianity today? And I thought I'd just read this verse and make 3 observations before you around your tables can have your say. Okay, so it's John chapter 14, verse 6 on page 43. And Jesus, who is speaking to Thomas, one of his friends, said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. It's very short, so I'll read it again. I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. 3 things to point out. The first of them is this. Jesus here is making an exclusive claim. Jesus here is making an exclusive claim. Verse 6, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And I say that because Sophie mentioned earlier that image of a mountain. And you can reach the peak, we're told, in various ways. Because God, we're told, is like the mountain. There are many ways to scale a mountain, and you can come to God, we're told, in different ways. One person has their own sort of spiritual experience, another pursues some sort of version of Islam. Some people in this room pursue Christianity, others have no sort of religious faith at all. But Jesus' claim, verse 6, is there is one way up the mountain. There is one way, he says, in which we can come to God. And there's only one way to reach heaven, home, or to reach God's holy mountain, because there is in fact just one true living God. Jesus is saying it's not like there are various faces of the same divine being or various names for the same ultimate God. And the way, verse 6, is Jesus. He is the way, we're told, to heaven. He's the way, and he's the truth, and he's the life. That is, he is the way to get to heaven, and he's the way to know the God of heaven, and he is the only way to find everlasting life. Verse 6, I'm the way, I'm the truth, I'm the life. No one comes to the Father except through me, which means, to put it bluntly, if it is all new to you, religion, can I say that Jesus must be the perfect place to start? In terms of being bothered, what's the sort of attraction of Christianity? Well, Jesus must be the perfect place to start, because if it's true, then Jesus holds the key to our eternity. because he's the way, and he's the truth, and he's the life. And that would, of course, mean that others hold no key to our eternity, and you can just write them off and get on with your life. In other words, what I'm saying is, by sort of agreeing to think about Jesus, you are not engaging in an exhaustive study of all world religions, because if Jesus is right, then other religions cannot be. Because firstly, he's making an exclusive claim. Second thing just to point out is he's making a historical claim. He's making a historical claim. Verse 6 again, I am the way, he says, and the truth and the life. I'm sorry if this is obvious, but the books that you are holding in your hand are written to persuade you that what Jesus is claiming here is true. And they are eyewitness evidence, both of the claims that are made by Jesus, I and the Father are one. He says no one can come to the Father except through me, but also how he proved it and showed that it was true. Jesus, we're told later on in John's Gospel, did many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book. But these are written, the author says, the things in these Gospels are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. You know, Jesus is the way, verse 6, because he is the truth, and he has come to earth revealing to us God. And he's shown us God's character. He's displayed to us God's glory. He has proved himself to be the Son of God in history in a way that as adults we can readily investigate the evidence is found in the words written in those books on your lap. And so secondly, the claim is historical. You can take away a gospel and you can read it with a friend or read it by yourself and think about the evidence, because this truth claim is historical and we need, I think, to reach a verdict for ourselves. I mean, it's not going to scan very well, is it? If you turn up to the gates of heaven on the last day and there's Jesus saying, why should I let you in? You say, I'm just so sorry. Do you know what? I never got round to it. Had all this evidence, easy to access, but I just had other things to do. So it's an exclusive claim. It's a historical claim. Thirdly, it is it not, a wonderful claim? It's a wonderful claim. Verse 6, I'm the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Life here in John's Gospel means a purposeful eternity, a life in which we're known and we know God. It is a perfect, full eternity, life exactly as it was meant to be: forgiveness, freedom, and entry into the house of God. I mean, verse 2, which is just before our reading, in my Father's house, Jesus says, are many rooms. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go and prepare a place for you? In other words, not only is the claim down here historical, it is a claim to truth, as Sophie has explained. And not only is it concrete, it's not merely philosophical, it's an exclusive, but it's not an elusive claim, it's not mystical. You don't have to close off your mind and just sort of have some blind faith. What Jesus Christ is offering is beyond good. It is wonderful. He is offering us each eternal life, eternity in heaven with the knowledge of our Father. And we can even, John says, know that somewhat in this life. This is eternal life, Jesus is going to go on to say, that they know you, the only true God, and Jesus Christ whom you have sent. Lord, said Simon Peter, it's kind of read out for us, to whom else shall we go? You have the words of eternal life. It's time to close. Why bother? Well, The claim of Christ is wonderful. It is a claim that he can offer life. Why bother? It's historical. The Christian undertaking is just believing what has been proved by Jesus' life. It is evidenced. We're not asking you to shut your minds. Why bother? It is exclusive. There is no one else like Jesus. There is no one else by whom we can be saved. It is historical, and it's exclusive, and it is wonderful, says Jesus. You must come to me because I am the way. John 14, verse 6, one last time. I am the way, he says, am the truth, am the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. Thanks for taking the time to join us this evening. I hope that's given you some things to think about. I'm going to hand back to Chris.